Today, the Big 12 lost even more credibility, which I did not think was possible. And all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time today. We got to talk about Oklahoma State and the dismal effort that they put on in Stillwater. Now, I believe in beginning with positives and then getting to the negatives. So positive here. Oklahoma State won its game against Tulsa in Stillwater. And in winning that game, extends a winning streak against Tulsa to 22 straight, dating back to 1951 in Stillwater. It has not really been a rivalry, though it has been billed as the Turnpike Classic, and with a late field goal, really solidifies the win 16-7, but that also misses the entire story. That Tulsa had this game to win and screwed it up over and over and over again. Bad substitution patterns led to Oklahoma State saying, cool, we'll substitute late and let you run out the clock on the play clock and have to use your timeouts. That happened more than once during this game. You're also talking about a Tulsa team that, yes, lacked Shamari Brooks, but also had 120 yards rushing and 120 yards of penalties. It was one of the worst penalized teams in football last year, and it wasn't looking much better this year. I have to remind myself that Zach Smith beat Oklahoma in 2017, an Oklahoma team that played in the playoff later that year. And then I have to remind myself that Kyle Kemp at Iowa State also beat Oklahoma, so it's not that big a feat. Now add Zeb Nolan going for like 400 against Oklahoma, and on it goes. But this Oklahoma State team is ranked number 11 in the country. Now, there are no Big Ten teams included in the latest AP ranking, so I did not expect them to be that high, but it also makes sense with only 76 teams at the time being scheduled when we had the AP voters put in their ballots, for which they were told do not consider teams that are not scheduled to play football, hence the SEC being ranked but not the Big Ten. Now with the Big Ten beginning to play football on October 24th, I expect to see 5 to 6 teams make it back into that AP top 25, if for no other reason than how poorly Oklahoma State played this game. Now, they lose Spencer Sanders earlier in the game, but he wasn't playing very well to begin with, and Pro Football Focus made him one of the worst returning quarterbacks in all of football, and he looked that way. They also could get little to nothing going running the ball with Chuba Hubbard. They go to Ethan Bullock, who looks like he's not fit for the job, before going to the true freshman in Shane Illingworth, a 4-star quarterback according to some, but also this time last year, he had already beaten Williams Fields by passing for 400-plus yards with 7 touchdowns. He threw 40 touchdown passes against 2 interceptions last year as a senior. Really great pickup for them, and I think that he should be the guy going forward, regardless of whether or not Spencer Sanders is healthy. They were a better football team. They looked like a better football team. But Tulsa did not. And that is for shame, because the Tulsa defense played really well, all things considered, and they had what Todd McShay called a poor man's Legion of Boom, because they go 6'3" to 6'4" across. And I'm really excited about Caleb Evans and, of course, Allie Green. I think both of those guys would be good. But you're talking about a Tulsa team that went 0 for 10 on third down conversions. At one point, they were 0 for 9 on third down conversions. They had punted 7 times. They had scored 7 points, and they still led Oklahoma State 7-3 until late in the game, when quite literally Tulsa gave them a gift with the last way that they had an offensive drive. They start 1st and 10 at the 25, and by the end of it, they're 4th and 24. And they're having to go for it on their own end, backed up against their end zone. Malcolm Rodriguez came in there late to pick up a sack, which I thought would have been mercy if they'd have called it as a 2-point conversion. Then we could have put this away. Then Oklahoma State tried desperately to even screw that up by running a play instead of taking a knee. Shane Illingworth actually saves a botch snap, and they end up getting the extra 3 points to make this score 16-7. But when you're the number 11 team in the country, we expect you to put away a 4-8 team from last year very well. And then add to that, the guy that Philip Montgomery went to go recruit to be the kicker after having to run walk-ons out there in an SMU game that they lost, Memphis game that they lost, isn't very good. And I'm going to continue to bring this up because Alex Felkins went to Holland Hall Preparatory, right? Holland Hall is a private school here in South Tulsa, which is about 15 miles south of the University of Tulsa. He was an All-American, a high school All-American kicker. He did not get an offer from the University of Tulsa. He joins a list of prospects from the Tulsa Metro that have not gotten offers from the University of Tulsa and have not been heavily recruited by the University of Tulsa. Savion Morrison went to Tulsa Edison. He's going to be in the backfield for Nebraska this year. Miles Slusher ends up at Arkansas. He went to Broken Arrow. Brennan Presley didn't even get an offer from Tulsa. He's on the 2 deep depth chart as a true freshman at Oklahoma State. They're not good enough to overlook these kids, and this is getting worse as Derek Gregg has ended his time as the University of Tulsa athletic director. They bring in Rick Dixon, who had been an athletic director interim a few years back, like decades. And his first act as athletic director isn't going to be firing Phil Montgomery, though I think that's the move. It's going to be carrying Phil Montgomery's water because the University of Tulsa not only has an interim athletic director, they got an interim president in Janet Leavitt, and they are trying to hold the line in this really trying financial time for the university like others. And look, man, I expected Chuba Hubbard and Tylan Wallace to do their redemption thing. I didn't expect to see Shane Willingworth at all. He went 4 of 5 for 74 yards. And then we had Hubbard go 27 rushes for 93 yards. That's 3.4 yards per carry. I don't know about any Heisman Trophy winners going to win that trophy average of 3.4 yards per carry. Matter of fact, I thought perhaps Eddie George might have done that. He averaged 5 yards per carry. So it's not even there for him. And then the nice thing that you saw was Prince, the A&M transfer for Tulsa, actually looked decent enough, right? Deneric Prince goes 14 rushes for 82 yards. Keelan Stokes had a nice day, 4 catches for 55 yards, and Josh Johnson had the only touchdown catch on the day with 4 receptions for 54 yards. But I keep going back to 7 punts by your Aussie kicker. I keep going back to 111 rushing yards, 120 penalties, 275 total yards for Tulsa, 277 for Oklahoma State. You can't expect the third best team in the country to perform like this, or not in the country, excuse me. The third best team in the Big 12, look at me, goodness me. The third best team in the Big 12 to perform like this and expect people to really have some respect for the Big 12. I don't have any respect for the Big 12. It's OU and Texas at this point and nobody else. Give the rest of it to the Sun Belt because this is embarrassing. You ought to stop a mud hole in this Tulsa team and walk it dry. They were a 23.5-point favorite against this Tulsa team. What are we actually waiting for or looking for from Oklahoma State except for them to achieve something they haven't? Desmond Howard and Reggie Bush both picked Oklahoma State to make the college football playoff. That means they won the Big 12. That means they beat Oklahoma. This team barely beat Tulsa, which might not be the 4th best football team in the entire state. And I'm looking at the Owasso Rams, and I'm looking at the Bixby Spartans for that spot. Just awful. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.